What if one of the most famous shipwrecks in history wasn't a myth at all, but happened right here in Corfu, out on the wine-dark sea? A man clings to the last splinters of his life, his raft shattered, his body broken, the storm still raging around him. Poseidon had seen him, and he wasn't finished.
Far over wine-dark waters, the raft of Odysseus drifted, cutting the swell of the deep on the path to the land of Phaeacia. Poseidon, shaker of earth, from the mountains of Salimi saw the man sailing the sea, and his heart swelled black with fury. Striking his trident, he spoke to the wind and the gathering darkness. So then the gods have changed their decree while I was in absence. This man nears the Phaeacian shore where his suffering ends, yet I swear he shall drink his full of disaster before him. Then he drove the clouds together and troubled the waters, seizing his trident and stirring the storms from every quarter. East wind clashed against south, and the bitter blowing of west wind tangled with north wind, born in the bright air, rolling the deep swell. Darkness fell on Odysseus, his knees and his spirit collapsed then. Groaning he spoke at last to the depths of his great-hearted spirit. Wretched am I beyond all men, what end awaits me? Better by far had I fallen at Troy on the plains before Priam, fallen with honor among the Achaeans, and earned my burial. Now I am fated to die by the most inglorious drowning. Even as these words fled him, a mountainous wave came upon him, terrible, cresting above, and it shattered the raft into timber. Far from the wreckage he fell, and the rudder was torn from his fingers. Under the water he plunged, and the weight of the sea held him downward, dragged by the clothes that the goddess Calypso had given in parting. Long he was under, nor could he rise through the crush of the breakers, yet at the last he surfaced and spat the bitter salt seaward. 2 days and 2 nights he was driven across the dark water, many times seeing his death in the face of the pitiless ocean. Then on the 3rd day's dawn, when the wind fell still and a calm came, lifted upon a great swell, he beheld it, land very near him. Sharp as the joy that children feel when a father recovers out of a sickness that held him and wasted his body in anguish, so did the sight of that shore and its forest rejoice brave Odysseus. Swiftly he swam, still straining to set his feet on the mainland. Battered and torn by the rocks at the mouth of a river, he found it smooth water, free from stones, and a shelter away from the wind there. Out of the sea he dragged himself, and his knees buckled under. Salt swollen hands hung heavy, the ocean had broken his spirit. Skin torn raw, and the brine still streaming from mouth and from nostrils. Breathless and speechless he lay, with barely the strength left for living. Then when his breath came back and his spirit returned to his body, losing the veil of the goddess, he cast it to seaward behind him. Up from the river he crawled to a thicket of olive trees growing close, woven over a clearing where neither the rain nor the wind's force pierced through the tangle of branches, nor sunlight entered in fullness. Under the leaves he gathered himself, like a coal at a fire berries at dusk in the black ash, out on a far lonely farmstead, keeping the seed of the fire alive, so he need not rekindle. So did Odysseus rest under leaves, and Athena in mercy shed upon both of his eyelids the gift and the grace of her sleeping.
That storm you just heard doesn't end in myth. It ends here, on this coastline Paleokastritsa, on the island of Corfu. For over 2,000 years, this place has been identified as the shore where Odysseus washed up after Poseidon destroyed his raft. Not somewhere like this. This exact place, and that changes how you experience the story. Because the Odyssey was never meant to be read silently, it was meant to be heard, performed, felt. For centuries, it lived as a spoken poem carried by memory and voice, accompanied by the lyre. So today, rather than starting with explanation, we begin where Homer begins. With a man who has lost everything. After 2 days and 2 nights in open water, Odysseus reaches land. Barely. His skin is torn, his body swollen with salt, his strength almost gone. He doesn't arrive as a hero, he arrives as a survivor. He drags himself inland and collapses beneath a thicket of olive trees, pulling leaves over his body like a coal buried in ash. Homer's image, not mine. Preserving the last fragile spark of life. And there, at last, he sleeps. But none of this is accidental, because if you want to understand what happens on this island, you need to understand one thing. Odysseus isn't saved by chance, he's saved by design. While he sleeps, Athena moves. Not toward him, but toward the city, to a young woman named Nausicaa, the daughter of King Alcinous. She comes to her in a dream, taking the form of a trusted friend, and suggests something simple. Go to the river tomorrow, wash your clothes. Your wedding day may not be far off. It's a small suggestion, just enough to feel like her own idea, and when Nausicaa wakes, she acts on it. The next morning, she sets out with her attendants. They bring their laundry to the river mouth. They wash the clothes and spread them across the rocks to dry. And then, as people do when the work is done, they rest. They eat. They laugh. They begin to play. And then, something small changes everything. A throw goes wide. The ball lands in the water. The girls cry out, and the sound carries. It reaches the trees, and wakes Odysseus, and everything could go wrong. Now, imagine the moment from his perspective. He is naked, salt-caked, disoriented, still half-broken from the sea. He tears a branch from the olive trees to cover himself and steps out from the thicket. Homer compares him to a starving mountain lion weathered, desperate, driven forward by necessity. The reaction is immediate. The girls scatter in fear. All of them, except one. Nausicaa stands her ground. Athena has given her courage, yes, but Homer makes it clear that something else is at work here as well. Composure, intelligence. She doesn't run. And Odysseus, even now, even in this state, reveals exactly who he is. He doesn't rush her. He doesn't collapse at her feet. He stops at a distance, and he speaks. Carefully, deliberately. He compares her to a young palm tree he once saw on Delos. Something so rare and striking that it stayed with him. He wishes her happiness, a good marriage, a harmonious life. It's flattering, thoughtful, and perfectly judged. Because Odysseus is not only a man of endurance, he is a man who understands people. Even here, at his lowest point, he reads the moment and finds the right words. Nausicaa listens. And she helps him. She gives him clothing, food, and oil to wash. She tells her attendants to stop being afraid. And then she does something quietly practical. She tells him to follow at a distance when they return to the city, not out of fear, but out of awareness. She understands how appearances shape reputation. Even now, she is thinking ahead. And this coastline is where that meeting is believed to have taken place. Paleokastritsa. When you stand here looking at the water and the cliffs, you are seeing a landscape that has been tied to this story for nearly 3,000 years. But to understand what happens next, we need to understand the people who live here, the Phaeacians. And this is where everything changes, because the people who find Odysseus aren't quite like anyone else in the ancient world, not entirely mythical, not entirely real. They exist at the edge of both worlds. Homer describes them as the greatest sailors alive. Their ships require no helmsman, no navigation. They know their destinations instinctively, moving through mist, unseen and unharmed. They are, in a sense, the last magical civilization Odysseus will encounter, because after this island, the world becomes familiar again. Their land is called Scheria, and the identification of Scheria with Corfu is not a modern theory. It goes back to antiquity itself. Writers like Thucydides were already making that connection in the 5th century BCE. The ancient name for Corfu, Kerkyra, was one of the most important Greek colonies in the Western Mediterranean. Following Nausicaa's instructions, Odysseus makes his way to the palace of King Alcinous, and here the atmosphere shifts once again. Athena intervenes a final time. She wraps him in mist as he enters the city, concealing him from view. And when that mist lifts at the palace doors, what Odysseus sees is something remarkable. Homer lingers on the description. Walls of bronze, a frieze gleaming blue along the upper edge, doors of gold and silver, and guarding them two immortal dogs crafted by Hephaestus, standing watch forever. Inside, golden figures hold torches aloft. Outside, gardens bear fruit, year-round pears, apples, figs, olives, grapes, sustained in an endless cycle. It is not simply wealth. It is order, permanence, a world untouched by decay. Inside, Odysseus does something telling. He goes first to Arete, the queen, not the king. He kneels before her and asks for help. This is not accidental. Odysseus understands power where it resides, how it moves, and once again, he chooses correctly. He is welcomed, fed, sheltered, given rest, no questions asked. This is Xenia, the ancient code of hospitality, and here it is honored fully. The next day, Alcinous holds a feast in his honor. There are games, contests, displays of strength and skill. And there is a performance, and then a blind bard begins to sing. His name is Demodocus, and what he sings is Odysseus's life. He has no idea the man he's singing about is sitting right in front of him. The song ends. The hall is still. Odysseus, the only man in the hall who truly knows what that story cost, lowers his head and covers his face in sobs, barely containing his lamentation. After everything he has endured, storms, monsters, exile, it is this that reaches him. The memory of who he was. No one notices. Except the king. Demodocus sings again. Another tale of Troy. Another dagger in Odysseus's chest, and each time it cleaves deeper. Sensing it, Alcinous shifts the mood. He calls for athletic games. The young men compete running, wrestling, throwing, and then one of them speaks out of turn? He mocks Odysseus. Says he looks more like a merchant than a man of action, not someone who belongs among competitors. It is a mistake. Odysseus rises. He takes up a discus heavier than any the others had been using and throws it. It sails past every mark, further than all of them. Then he turns, calm but unmistakable, and offers a challenge. Anyone who wishes may compete with him. In boxing, wrestling, running, anyone except the son of his host. 'Cause even now he observes the code. The tension eases. The music resumes. And later, at the evening feast, Odysseus makes a request. He asks Demodocus to sing of the wooden horse.
Sing now, muse, of the horse that the cunning Achaeans had fashioned, but first of the war that would not end, and the walls that would not fall. 10 years the armies of Argos had battered the walls without breaking. 10 years the towers of Ilion held, and the Trojans inside them. Built by the hands of the gods were those walls, by Poseidon and Apollo. Stone beyond mortal siegecraft, beyond any ram or fire. Neither could Trojans drive out the Achaeans, nor Greeks breach the city, locked in a war without movement, with death the only companion. Then spoke Odysseus, cleverest born of the men before Priam, weaving the plan that would end it, the hollow beast made of timber. Epius built it, that master of craft, under Palace Athena's guidance, shaping the ribs and the belly to carry its soldiers. Into the darkness they climbed, the picked men, bronze in their fists still, breathing in silence and waiting inside for the night and the signal. Out from the beach sailed the ships, as if broken, as if in surrender. hiding behind the far side of Tenedos, watching and ready. Trojans in wonder came out through the gates to the place where it waited. Garlands upon it and singing, believing the long war was ended. 3 times they circled the horse, and 3 times they struck at its belly. Some cried out to destroy it, to split the strange offering open. But the will of the gods had turned, and the horse was dragged inward. Fools, for the belly was full of the men who would murder their children. Midnight fell and the trapdoor opened, the warriors descended. Silent through streets where the feasting had been, with their bronze blades drawn out. Fire took hold of the rooftops and screaming rose up from the houses. Priam was slaughtered at prayer on the altar, his blood on the hearthstone. Small Astyanax, torn from his mother, was thrown from the ramparts. Cassandra screamed in the temple of Pallas, her cries went unheard. Ajax defiled what the goddess held sacred and sealed his destruction. Apollo wept for the city he loved, and the gods turned in fury, cursing the victors to wander and drown on the wine-dark road home.
The song ends, and this time Odysseus doesn't hide it, he weeps openly. King Alcinous does not look away. He asks the question that has been waiting. "Who are you?" And Odysseus answers, "I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known among men for all manner of cunning." And with that, he begins his story. But here is what matters for this place. Those stories happen elsewhere. The Cyclops, Circe, the Sirens, the underworld, all of that lies behind him. Here, the journey is ending, because when his story is done, the Phaeacians do what no one else could. They take him home. They prepare a ship, load it with gifts, and carry him across the sea. And for the first time in 20 years, Odysseus sleeps without fear. A sleep so deep that Homer compares it to death itself. When they reach Ithaca, they carry him ashore. Still sleeping, still unaware, finally home. But for the Phaeacians, there is a cost. Poseidon sees what they have done, and he is angered. They have helped his enemy. They have carried him safely across the sea. So he asks Zeus for permission to act, and Zeus allows it. As the ship returns to harbor, just within sight of land, Poseidon strikes it and turns it to stone. Off this coast, there is a small rocky islet, Kolovri Rock. Tradition holds that this is the ship, frozen where it was struck. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But that isn't really the point. For nearly 3,000 years, people have stood here, looked out at that rock, and seen a story. And that matters, because you can read the Odyssey anywhere. But standing here, where the story has lived for generations, it becomes something else. Not just literature, but a place where a man reached the end of his suffering. Where a young woman showed courage. Where a poet sang and a hero remembered. And where a journey that crossed gods, monsters, and oceans finally came to rest. I'm Scott, and this is my expat life on the Renaissance Spirit Channel. This has been Odysseus Corfu. It can be yours too. Experience this yourself. You don't need a tour. From Corfu town, you can take the green bus out to Paleokastritsa, about 45 minutes through olive groves and hillside villages. Come here. Bring the Odyssey and read it on this shore, where the story has been alive for nearly 3,000 years. Because some stories don't stay in books. They wait in places like this until you stand here yourself. And if you want more journeys like this, where history, literature, and place come together, subscribe and follow these stories back to the places they still live. Thank you for walking and embracing this memory with me. I'll always cherish my time here in Corfu.
Ay, 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 ay.